My name is Elena. I miss my mom and my dad.
She didn't just kill my daughter. She killed all of us.
Looks can be deceiving. This girl with bushy bangs is actually a cold-blooded killer. She shot her mother in the face and attempted to kill her stepfather. As Jim Ray reports, the jury reached a decision on this case very quickly.
We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of first-degree murder.
A baby-faced teenager listens as the jury delivers a damning verdict. A home surveillance camera captured the moment Carly Gregg shot her mother to death in their home. She tiptoes through the house, hiding a handgun behind her. Moments later, the chilling sound of gunshots rings out. She then calmly sits in the kitchen and lures her stepfather into an ambush by texting him from her mother's phone, "When will you be home, honey?" Her stepfather later testified about what happened when he arrived.
When I opened the door to the kitchen there, went off in my face.
After being shot in the shoulder, he frantically called 911. Police body cam footage shows Carly appearing calm and composed during her arrest. Officers swabbed her hands for gunshot residue.
Which hand did you shoot with?
The jurors were shown a chilling diary entry written by Carly that said, "You don't need family. It's okay to be evil." In a dramatic moment, the prosecutor held up the murder weapon and reenacted the crime in front of the courtroom.
Fired once, you hear her mother scream. Fired twice, you hear her mother scream. 1, 2, 3, 4, you hear the third shot.
Her lawyers argued that Carly should be found not guilty by reason of insanity, but the jury didn't agree. After just 1 hour of deliberation, they returned with a guilty verdict. Carly openly sobbed as the jury recommended life without parole. As part of their insanity defense, her lawyers claimed that Carly had told her doctor she felt like a zombie because of the medication she was taking for anxiety and depression. A woman, Eliza Russell, has taken a plea deal after a deadly DUI crash that left 2 men dead in Fort Lauderdale in 2013. Emotions ran high in the courtroom as the case concluded. It's been 3.5 years since the crash when Eliza graduated from FIU and was accepted into an MBA program. Despite her accomplishments and a promising future, she was handcuffed and taken to prison.
I remember that morning when the reality of what had happened began to settle in. And I was screaming, "Oh God, what have I done?" And for a long time, I wanted to die too.
Eliza Russell admitted she was drunk and behind the wheel of her mother's Porsche when she struck and killed 2 men in Fort Lauderdale. The judge sentenced her to 5 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation.
He's a mob in my heart. Don't mob, I don't think he will never heal.
During the plea deal hearing, the father of one of the victims, Samuel Jules, requested that the judge impose a 5-year prison sentence for Eliza Russell.
I want justice for my son.
The other victim's mother asked for a 10-year sentence, which was half of what Eliza Russell could have faced if convicted.
As one who readily admits to having driven drunk in the past, one who readily identifies that the only difference between him and his little sister is luck, not virtue.
Russell's older brother told the court that Eliza and her family are now committed to spreading the message about the dangers of drunk driving to young people.
The cold hard truth of the matter is that Mr. Jules and Mr. Martindale died because I was shallow and lonely and insecure.
Ultimately, the judge believed that Russell was remorseful and had been rehabilitated.
I will never look in a mirror and not see the girl who killed Mackenzie Jules and Samuel Martindale. They are a part of me.
Russell's insurance company paid about $2 million in settlement claims to the victims' families, and the Russell family contributed an additional $220,000. Although she must serve at least 4 years, she could have faced up to 20 years if convicted. Russell has vowed to spread the message to young people once she is released, stating, "Guilt is like a sickness, and I will live with this disease forever." A heartbreaking trial has begun, centered on the tragic death of a boy who allegedly starved to death. One of the individuals accused of his death is his stepmother, Miranda Casares. A video was shown in court where Benjamin Cervera is seen begging for food. In a short video clip shown in court, Benjamin Cervera is seen asking for some bread. This video was allegedly recorded by his stepmother, Miranda Casares, on the morning of his death, August 17, 2021. Both Casares and Benjamin's father, Brandon Cervera, are charged with injury to a child. During opening arguments, the prosecution referred to Casares as a monster.
Some children's monsters live under their bed at night. But Benjamin Cervera's monster lived in the room next door, and he called her mom.
The prosecution revealed that just 2 months before his birthday, Benjamin Cervera weighed only 28 pounds. They also disclosed that Benjamin would try to sneak into the kitchen at night to find food, but his access was restricted, as everything, including his room, was locked. This heartbreaking detail emphasized the severe neglect he endured leading up to his death.
There's been straps placed on there to prevent the child, Benjamin, from getting inside the pantry, from getting inside the fridge to get any food.
Photos shown in court depicted the locking devices on cabinets and the closet door in Benjamin's bedroom, highlighting the extent of his confinement. Miranda Casares became emotional when photos of Benjamin in the hospital were presented to the jury. The images also revealed bruising on various parts of the boy's body, indicating further mistreatment. The co-defendant, Benjamin's father, Brandon Cervera, is still awaiting his trial date and could also face a life sentence if found guilty. On sentencing day, the woman convicted of driving drunk and killing a pregnant tourist faced an emotional confrontation with the victim's family in court. The atmosphere was tense as the family expressed their grief and loss directly to the woman responsible.
And I was robbed to witness her as a mother, and to have a family with her.
Rosa Rivera Kim has learned her fate. She was sentenced to 15 years and immediately taken into custody. Now pregnant herself, Rivera Kim faces a future where she will likely give birth while serving her sentence. Nearly 3 years ago, she crashed into a hotel cabana, killing 26-year-old pregnant tourist Alana Della and her unborn son, Joshua. The coincidence of Rivera Kim being 5 months pregnant now is a heartbreaking reality for the victim's family, making the loss even more difficult to bear.
I was robbed to witness her as a mother, and to have a family with her.
Michael Della and his wife, Alana, were vacationing at the Riverside Hotel in Los Olas in 2012 when Rosa Rivera Kim crashed her car into a poolside cabana. Alana was inside at the time of the tragic accident.
There are still days when it hits me and it almost takes my breath away. Nothing compares to the pain of burying your child, and in the case of us, a grandchild as well.
Prosecutors revealed that Rivera Kim's blood alcohol level was 3 times the legal limit at the time of the crash. Rivera Kim claims she doesn't remember the incident. 2 psychologists testified that she suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder and has multiple personalities. Her current pregnancy is considered high risk. Despite the defense attorney's request for her to begin her sentence after delivery, Rivera was taken into custody immediately.
I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. And I wish you guys just could see what's inside of my...
For Alana Della's family, Rivera Kim's apology does little to heal their broken hearts.
Rivera Kim, it's amazing how one person can make so many poor decisions.
Rivera Kim was also sentenced to 15 years of probation, and her driver's license will be permanently suspended. The judge reserved the right to modify her sentence if complications arise with her pregnancy. They were a blissfully happy married couple until tragedy struck when the bride was killed on her way home from the wedding reception. A bail hearing was held for 25-year-old Jamie Komorowski, who is accused of drunkenly crashing into 34-year-old Samantha Miller and her husband, killing Samantha and seriously injuring Eric Hutchinson. The hearing became a painful confrontation between 2 families. Samantha Miller's mother was overwhelmed with heartbreak, shedding tears for her daughter, the beautiful bride who lost her life the same night she got married. Samantha and Eric were driving a golf cart after their reception when the accident occurred. Komorowski appeared in court via closed-circuit TV, asking the judge for release on bond. One by one, Samantha's grieving family members took the stand to speak.
The defendant made a conscious decision to get into her vehicle after drinking all day and take away my daughter. She didn't just kill my daughter, she killed all of us.
Samantha's father remains deeply overcome with grief, struggling to cope with the loss of his daughter.
I would give anything to hug my daughter again. Anything.
Samantha's sister says that hearing a police siren reminds her of that awful night.
When the sirens go off, and I think about that time running down the street, screaming my sister's name.
Jamie Komorowski's family, including her parents, brother, and sister, were also in court. The defendant collapsed when she saw them.
I also want to express my deepest sympathy and sorrow to the family of the Hutchinsons and the Millers.
The judge ordered that Jamie Komorowski remain behind bars without bail. After the hearing, Samantha's family spoke, and her mother requested that her daughter's maiden name, not her married name, be used.
Samantha's name is Samantha Miller. She got married. She died on her wedding night. I'm sorry, but that is her legal name.
Was there a rift with the groom?
The goal the Miller family has is to work with Eric together on Sam's estate.
A tragedy that has turned two families upside down. The judge also ruled that if the defendant's trial doesn't begin within a specific time frame, he will order her release on $150,000 bail. Jamie Komorowski has pled not guilty. The judge was nearly brought to tears in an Orange County courtroom as he listened to an orphaned child describe life without her parents. He then sentenced the young woman responsible for the couple's death in a DUI crash.
My name is Elena. I miss my mom and my dad. I feel sad when the accident happened.
3 girls from Santa Ana were orphaned after their parents died in a drunk driving accident. They wrote notes about their mother, and one by one, family members addressed the convicted driver, Grace, telling her how she had forever changed their lives.
Those beautiful girls will never have their parents for the major moments of their lives. Who is going to walk them down the aisle if they ever get married? Who is going to dance with them at their quinceañera?
Grace Coleman, a 23-year-old woman from Newport Beach, pleaded guilty after causing a fatal crash while driving with a blood alcohol level more than twice the legal limit. Officials revealed that Grace had been given a ride home after being at a bar, but she later got into a Range Rover, ran a red light in Newport, and crashed into the family's car. The 3 girls in the back seat screamed as their parents, Gabby and Henry, were killed instantly.
Her car landed in a position where she'd have to walk past that victim vehicle to start leaving the scene. And she walked past these crying girls to leave the scene.
Grace Coleman had a prior DUI arrest and faced a maximum sentence of 42 years to life in prison. The judge, emotional as he addressed the victim's family, ultimately sentenced Grace to 21 years to life.
I sense strongly that they would want you to continue to live your lives with joy, to appreciate every day, to raise those precious girls. I'm sorry.
The 3 young sisters are now living with their aunt. In 2006, an Uber driver accused of killing 6 people was forcibly removed from a Michigan courtroom after attempting to lunge at a witness.
I seen him coming.
During her testimony, the defendant began interrupting and rambling incoherently. The judge ordered him to stop.
Be quiet in today's proceedings, okay? If you have anything to say, whisper to your attorney.
The suspect then lunged out of his seat, but was quickly restrained by deputies and dragged out of the courtroom. He wasn't allowed to return and had to follow the rest of the proceedings via a closed-circuit link with 2 deputies restraining him. The suspect eventually pleaded guilty to all charges and was sentenced to life in prison. A man who shot and killed his ex-wife's new husband in a church parking lot during her mother's funeral has been sentenced to 40 years in prison. The shooting deeply affected both the victims and the shooters' families. Stephen Lowe pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter for the November 2022 shooting of Jermaine Turner at Oasis of Hope Church on East 25th Street. As part of a plea agreement, a murder charge was dismissed. Turner's mother expressed gratitude that the families were spared from reliving the incident in a trial.
I'll never forget, but I'm glad that it's over.
Lowe showed up at the funeral of his ex-wife's mother and started a fight with Shannon Turner's new husband, Jermaine. During the altercation, Lowe shot Jermaine in the chest. Lowe's attorney later read a statement on his behalf.
First, I want to apologize to Mr. Turner's family and my family. I realize I have an anger issue that needs treatment, and since I have taken responsibility for what I did, the primary thing I will focus on in the future is getting control over my anger issue.
Pamela Grant, who witnessed her son being shot and killed, addressed Stephen Lowe in the courtroom, saying she hopes that one day she'll be able to forgive him. Outside the courtroom, Grant even offered comfort to Lowe's family.
Are you his mother? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
My deepest condolences.
No, but we try to raise our kids the best way we can.
We do.
When they get grown and stuff, I mean, it's out of our hands.
Lowe has been sentenced to 40 years in prison.
I just want people to think before they make a decision to pick up a gun and shoot somebody, because nobody wins.
The families are left to cope with a lifetime sentence of grief.
I am so sorry.
Okay, I'll be praying for you, okay?
Likewise.
Shannon and Jermaine Turner had only been married for 3 months. Jermaine, who was 42, tragically left behind 5 children. A Georgia jury unanimously found Hannah Payne guilty on all counts in the 2019 shooting death of 62-year-old Kenneth Herring. Prosecutors argued that Payne took the law into her own hands, following Herring after he left the scene of a crash she wasn't involved in. They say Payne cut him off and eventually shot him.
Mr. Foreperson, if you would go ahead and read the verdict.
With regard to count 1 as to the offense of malice murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. With regard to count 2 as to the offense of felony murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. With regard to count 3 as to the offense of aggravated assault, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. With regard to count 4 as the offense of felony murder, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. With regard to count 5 as the offense of false imprisonment, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. With regard to count 6 as to the offense of possession of firearm during commission of a felony, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. With regard to count 8 as to the offense of possession of firearm during commission of a felony, we, the jury, find the defendant guilty. Respectfully submitted, the 12th day of December 2023.
Hannah Payne has been sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. 5 people were taken away in handcuffs after an argument erupted just minutes after Lantonio Watson was sentenced to 37 years behind bars. The courtroom was filled with intense emotion following a tense day of proceedings. The sentencing stemmed from crimes that occurred last September when Martell Gray II, Robert Macklin, and Shamar Bodin were shot at the Whitney Young Estates in Dayton. Gray died, while Bodin and Macklin were wounded but survived. Watson will now serve a lengthy prison sentence for the incident. Lantonio Watson approached the bench on his last day in a Montgomery County courtroom.
It's been a long, hard, and extremely sad 11 months for us.
He stood and listened as he faced the family of Martell Gray II, the Dayton man whom Watson was convicted of shooting to death.
I truly wish you would have thought about how much pain you was inflicting on others while you were chasing these 3 young men down.
Despite continuing to deny the accusations, Lantonio Watson asked the judge for leniency and requested forgiveness from Martell Gray II's family.
I know deep down in my heart I'm not guilty of the charge, I'm not guilty of the crime I'm convicted of. But I was wondering if you can give me if you can show a little sympathy. And to Mook's family, I'm not the one that killed y'all's son. I know how I could lose a loved one.
Judge Barbara P. Gorman sentenced Lantonio Watson to 37 years to life in prison. After the sentencing, tensions between the families, which had built up during the emotional week-long trial, erupted into altercations and further accusations. Outrage over the decision spilled into the hallway and onto the sidewalk outside the courtroom. 5 individuals were handcuffed, arrested, and charged with disorderly conduct. Shamar Bodin and Robert Macklin, who were also shot in the incident but survived, were present. Watson's attorney has stated that his client plans to appeal the sentencing. The defendant broke down in tears during court as the mother of the victim described her daughter's tragic loss. James Rhodes admitted guilt in a plea agreement with prosecutors. In return, he will serve a life sentence, avoiding the possibility of the death penalty. He was charged with robbing and taking the life of Shelby Farah, who worked as a clerk at a grocery store in Brentwood. The courtroom was filled with emotion as the state attorney shared statements from Shelby Farah's siblings, and Darlene Farah, Shelby's mother, also gave a heartfelt address. Several breaks had to be taken to allow people to compose themselves. James Rhodes collapsed to the courtroom floor in tears as Darlene Farah spoke about her daughter, Shelby. Rhodes has now entered a guilty plea, giving up his right to a trial after almost 4 years. Darlene Farah shared that she had always wanted this outcome: life in prison without parole for James Rhodes. However, former state attorney Angela Corey disagreed and continued to seek the death penalty. Since taking office, new state attorney Melissa Nelson said she has had multiple discussions with Darlene Farah, the investigators, and her assistant before deciding to accept the plea deal and remove the death penalty as an option. She added that it was not a difficult decision for her to make.
You know, I feel very strongly that this resolution, it ensures the safety of the public. It brings finality to a case that's been litigated for almost 4 years. It provides certainty in the outcome, and very importantly, it respects the wishes of Darlene Farah.
Melissa Nelson stated that she doesn't believe this case will set a precedent regarding the wishes of victims' families, emphasizing that each case will be evaluated individually to decide between a plea deal or going to trial. The family of Shelby Farah was visibly emotional after the court session. When the hearing ended, Darlene Farah expressed, "It's over," words she had been waiting nearly 4 years to say. The journey had been long and painful, but she shared that she and her 2 surviving children are ready to start the healing process. Inside the courtroom, clutching a photo of her daughter Shelby, Darlene told James that she forgave him for what he had done to Shelby and to their family. She also shared a birthday card Rhodes had sent her, in which he thanked her for fighting to save him from the death penalty. Reflecting on the moment when Rhodes broke down and fell to the floor, Darlene had her own thoughts to share.
How did I feel? I cry every day. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, it didn't bother me. He cries. I cry every day, every night. Some days I cry all day.
Darlene said that, in her mind, her effort to keep the death penalty off the table was the right decision. She mentioned her intention to meet with James privately to further discuss what happened. Shelby's brother and sister also shared victim impact statements, which were read aloud by State Attorney Melissa Nelson. Shelby's brother, Caleb Farah, expressed that his daughter will never get to know her Aunt Shelby personally. She will only learn about her through stories, videos, and pictures. Her younger sister, Nicole, shared that she was thinking about all the memories she would miss without her sister. It was sentencing day for a man convicted of murdering his pregnant wife and her father. We also heard from her brother about the killer's presence in court. To avoid a trial and the possibility of the death penalty, the defendant pled guilty to all the charges he faced. The victim's family was in the courtroom, emotional, and expressed gratitude that justice was finally served after all this time. It's been 5 long and painful years since the Bernard family lost their loved ones.
My sister Martine, she was like the life of the family.
20-year-old Martin Bernard was 6 months pregnant when her husband, Cassandra Blanc, killed both her and her father, 68-year-old Roosevelt Bernard, in June of 2018.
Just a great person, a really big role model for our family.
After the triple murders, Blanc gave police a full confession, saying he killed his wife because she, quote, disrespected him. He shot her, then dismembered her body. A day before police discovered her remains, her father was found dead in a field near his Hollywood home with his body burned. Roosevelt Jr., named after his father, shared that not a day goes by without him thinking of his father and sister.
She looked up to me. She inspired me just to keep going. He was hardworking. He was not the type to complain. He was my hero.
To avoid a trial, Blanc pleaded guilty to 3 murder charges and 2 charges of abusing a dead body. Members of the Bernard family were in court to witness his sentencing to life in prison.
Words doesn't change anything, but I just want you guys to know I really am sorry.
Blanc's apology was just a series of empty words for the Bernard family.
There's no words that can undo the things that he did to us.
They are simply relieved that, after all these years, justice has finally been served.
Our family can finally have a sense of peace, knowing that he won't be able to do what he did again to anyone else.
The family is finding some sense of closure now. Once again, the defendant pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Lyle and Eric were retried, and this time the result was very different. The verdict is in for Lyle and Eric Menendez, and they have been found guilty of murdering their parents. McDermott reports on Lyle Menendez, who was charged with killing his mother and father. The jury found him guilty of first-degree murder for the deaths of both Jose and Kitty Menendez. His brother Eric received the same guilty verdict. Both were also convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and murder with special circumstances. In this case, the special circumstances included waiting to ambush their parents, making them eligible for the death penalty. While no cameras were allowed in the courtroom to capture their reactions, author Dominic Dunn, who was present, later described what he witnessed to reporters.
Silence throughout. Eric and Lyle did not react in any way. I saw no tears from them. They did not look at each other.
The penalty phase of the case is about to start. During this time, the Menendez lawyers will push for life imprisonment, while the prosecution will push for the death penalty. In the meantime, the lawyers and others involved in the case must keep their opinions private, at least for now.
It is hereby ordered that the defendants and all attorneys of record in this case and/or the agents for such attorneys make no public comment about this case until the penalty phase has been concluded and the jury discharged.
The lawyers for the Menendez brothers argued that the brothers and killed their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, because they feared their parents would kill them. The brothers claimed this fear came from years of abuse by their parents. In their first trials, more than 2 years ago, the jurors couldn't reach a decision, but this time, the outcome was different. It was guilty. Tamara Sitch, known in the wrestling world as Tammy Sunny Sitch, was sentenced to 17 years in prison for a fatal DUI incident in Daytona Beach. In the 1990s, Sitch achieved significant fame with WWE. Authorities reported that she collided with a stationary vehicle, resulting in the death of 75-year-old Julian LaFrancis Lassiter. At the time of the crash, her blood alcohol level was 0.280. Which is 3.5 times Florida's legal limit of 0.08.
In regard to these DUI manslaughter cases, they're particularly difficult in sentencing in criminal court. We see, of course, many sensitive crimes, much unnecessary pain and suffering by victims, but somehow the DUI manslaughter cases seem to be the worst. Nothing that this court says or does today can bring back Mr. Lassiter, and I'm pretty certain that nothing that I say or do, although I wish it could provide some sort of comfort for the family. Mr. Lassiter, although I'll mention, of course, every human life has infinite value, and in the testimony that I've heard, there's a very, very positive influence on people around him and tried to help people. So it's always sad to lose a human life, particularly one that's such a light in so many people's lives. This family, of course, will forever have the day before this happened and then the day after. And that line in the sand of delineation for them will be a prominent point in their lives that will be just infinitely sad. In this day and age where we have Uber and Lyft and everything else, all these other taxi services, I do have a difficult time sort of unwrapping why it is that we see DUI manslaughter in such a reckless disregard for human life, which is what a DUI manslaughter represents. In this particular case, the defendant is requesting a downward departure. Their burden of proof would be to show me, by the preponderance of the evidence, that the defendant requires specialized treatment for a mental disorder that is unrelated to substance abuse or addiction, or for a physical disability, and that the defendant is amenable to treatment. While I credit the efforts made by the defense in regard to bringing the two very qualified doctors in to testify, this court has some concerns in regard to whether the preponderance of the evidence has been met. And candidly, when the court has questions in its mind, the reality is somebody has a burden of proof. Questions for this court, given the long history of the substance abuse by the defendant and the overlapping symptoms of the mental illness or the substance abuse, can't say by the preponderance of the evidence that it's unrelated. The substance abuse treatment clearly began long before any symptoms that they've described for me of the mental illness that they're diagnosing. In fairness, Dr. Danziger met with her, I believe, one time. Dr. Fabian met with her 3 times. And a lot of their information was based on her self-reporting. In addition to that, the state made the point across that when I'm looking at the language that requires specialized treatment, well, part of that specialized treatment was a mood stabilizer, which I think was pretty much conceded could be provided in the prison system. So I can't say by the preponderance of the evidence that the grounds for the downward departure have been met. Had I found that, though, I do want to go ahead and say, mention the question of whether the court should depart. Even had the court found that the downward departure was met, this court can't say that this is a case where it should depart. The facts of this case are fairly egregious. The defendant admits to drinking vodka before driving in her kitchen while she's preparing, I guess, burritos. Her blood alcohol is very, very high. Though low level, she has some THC in her system. There's an open bottle in the front seat of the car of the vodka that she's drinking, apparently. She runs a red light just prior to this accident, almost causes another accident, slams into the back of this decedent, Mr. Lassiter, so hard that he hits the car in front of him. While he's stopping at a red light at, before 8:30 p.m. in the evening. So through no fault of his own, and I can't say that I've seen anything that Mr. Lassiter could have done to prevent this. Unfortunately, we had the death of Mr. Lassiter. In mitigation, I do have to acknowledge a few things. While I don't feel that there are grounds to downward depart, I think there was some evidence of at least some current mental health issues in regard to the defendant and some serious addiction issues. She has had some tragedy in her life, although candidly many of us have, and unfortunately it doesn't really relieve the responsibility of a crime like this. The defendant in this case has entered an open plea. She's taken some responsibility for her actions, and I do credit her for that. In regard to the Gabriel case, and I'm going to go ahead and cite the case for the record. It's a Supreme Court case from the state of Florida. It is cited at 314 7th 3rd 1243. It's a 2021 case, as I said, out of the Supreme Court of Florida. State's argument in their memorandum of sentencing is that because that's her maximum, that is also her minimum pursuant to the Gabriel case. I don't see any other way that you could read the Gabriel case, and I think, in fairness, the defense has sort of acknowledged that that's pretty much the situation. So, in regards to counts 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, is that accurate? The misdemeanors pursuant to the negotiations and adjudicate the defendant guilty, sentence her to 364 days concurrent with any other counts in this case, with credit for the 364 days that she's already served. She's actually got more credit than that, but that's a statutory maximum. In regard to count 2, driving under a suspended license, causing death or serious bodily injury, I do note it is an aggravator that she had no valid license, and she's not only choosing to drive, but choosing to drive under the influence. Pursuant to this, and state, not to be nitpicky, but I actually come up with the amount of 10.6625 would be the minimum and the maximum. So just to clarify specifically in calculating, I'm going to adjudicate the defendant guilty, sentence her to 10.6625 years in the Department of Corrections. Her credit is 566 days, so with credit for the 566 days. On count 1, the DUI manslaughter, second-degree felony, I'm going to adjudicate you guilty. I'm going to sentence you consecutively to 7 years in the Department of Corrections to be served after the 10.6625, with, again, credit for, well, she's already gotten credit, I guess, on count 2, so that would already be applied. In regard to the remaining 8 years, I'm going to sentence you to followed by 8 years of probation, the conditions of which are following. Let me see where I get this down. There is a 4-year minimum mandatory to count 1, so the first 4 years of that term will be a minimum mandatory sentence. Conditions will be standard conditions of probation, plus she must have a substance abuse evaluation with any follow-up treatment. She must have the alcohol safety education course. If that overlaps with the substance abuse evaluation, of course, there would only be one required. Victim awareness program, 50 community service hours, $10,000 fine, and her driver's license will be permanently revoked. Otherwise, any standard fines and costs. State is not requesting cost of prosecution, cost of investigation, so I'll not be applying those. All right, does that cover everything? State?
And it has no information.
All right. Any questions, Ms. Sitch? All right. You have 30 days to appeal. That must be in writing with the clerk of court. If you cannot afford counsel, appoint counsel to represent you.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
May we be appointed for purposes of appeal now?
Can we go ahead and put that?
Thank you.
Sitch showed no visible reaction to the sentencing. She spoke briefly with her legal team before being escorted out of the courtroom. She received 10 years for driving with a suspended license causing death and 7 years for DUI manslaughter to be served consecutively. After her prison term, Sage will undergo 8 years of probation, perform 50 hours of community service, and pay a $10,000 fine. Her driver's license has been permanently revoked. Lassiter's family has also filed a lawsuit against Sitch for at least $30,000 for medical and funeral expenses and emotional damages. Leilani Simon, a 24-year-old mother from Savannah, has been arrested and charged in connection with the disappearance and death of her son, Quentin Simon. The boy had been reported missing from their family home in October, prompting a large search operation across Chatham County. According to the arrest affidavit, Leilani initially provided investigators with conflicting accounts about Quentin's whereabouts and activities that day. Surveillance footage later revealed that she had left the house early in the morning, driving to a nearby dumpster site. Authorities claim she disposed of a large bag there, which was eventually traced to a landfill where remains were found weeks later. Simon, who appeared in court in handcuffs, was formally booked and processed after a weeks-long investigation built the case against her. Meanwhile, friends, neighbors, and community members gathered at a park for a vigil in Quentin's memory, sharing heartfelt messages of support for the family and calling for justice. Prosecutors also presented text messages between Simon and Craig Weston, a drug dealer, suggesting the two had been in contact in the days leading up to Quentin's disappearance.
All right, you testified, feels like a long time ago now, about the defendant's October 5th interviews at Chatham County Police Headquarters, right?
Yes.
And over the course of that day, she disclosed 2 trips away from the residence on the night of October 4th, morning of October 5th.
Yes.
And on that day, what was the story as to the first trip, the earlier of the 2?
She described going to the Flacco's Tacos to meet up with a gentleman she knew as Red.
To do what?
To pay back a drug front.
Over time, I guess by October 12th, in the interview with Special Agent Snyder and Special Agent Solomon that we watched more recently in time, did that story change?
Yes, it did.
How did it change?
It moved from meeting Red for a drug front at the Flacco's Tacos into meeting Red/Craig on Arkwright to buy cocaine and Percocets.
What do you mean by Red/Craig?
She told the interviewers that Red is Craig in that interview.
Okay, same person.
Yes.
Okay. As early as October 5th, you had thumbed through her phone, right?
Yes.
And on that day, did you at some point, did you see messages in her phone between her and a contact saved as Craig?
Correct.
When do you remember first seeing those messages?
I believe I mentioned them on October 5th to her.
Okay. And did you ask her a question about Craig that day?
I did.
What was the question that you asked her?
I think I asked her specifically, who is Craig?
Did you ask her whether there was anything going? What did she say to that, if you remember?
I believe she referred to him as an older white male that was not Red.
And it was on the 12th that she said, actually, Craig and Red are the same person.
Yes.
And it's an African American gentleman, right?
Yes.
Okay. On the 5th, you had seen messages between her and a contact saved as Craig, right? Day
Yes.
one. And did you ask her whether there was anything sexual going on between the two of them?
Yes, I did.
And what did she say about that?
I believe in that specific interview, I don't fully remember what she said.
Okay. At some point in the investigation, did she deny that, though?
Yes, she did.
Okay. You later received a copy of her cell phone extraction, correct?
Yes.
And did you select and export from that cell phone extraction all of her communications with the contact saved as Craig?
Yes.
Do you see in front of you State's Exhibit 91?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell us what that is?
So this is an extraction report of all communications and anything that has to do with the user she has saved as Craig.
Your Honor, I would introduce this as State's Exhibit 91.
No objection, Judge.
Okay, submit it.
Now, does this exhibit show when she first saved Craig as a contact?
Yes, it does.
And what was that date?
On September 16th in 2022.
Okay, so that would have been how long before Quentin's disappearance? Like a little less than 3 weeks, maybe?
Correct.
Okay. In moving forward from that, is there a series of text message exchanges between the two of them leading up to October 4th?
Yes, text messages and phone calls.
Okay. And does this document include all of them?
Yes, it does.
Before we get into, reading individual ones and describing when they were sent and received and so forth, let me just ask you, can you kind of summarize what these communications show as far as what was going on with the two of them, between the two of them during, say, late September, early October?
So pretty much from when Leilani saved Craig into her phone, it appears that they began a sexual relationship and were scheduling meetups to meet and have sexual intercourse.
And where was it that they appeared to be meeting?
At his place of residence.
And where is that?
Off of Arkwright.
Okay. On Arkwright Road?
Yes.
Off of Highway 204?
Yes.
Okay. And I think you testified earlier that you identified Craig as Craig Weston of Arkwright Road?
Yes.
Okay. Let me draw your attention to a few of these and have you talk us through them, okay?
Okay.
Can you go to line 7?
Yes.
So this thing is like, we've had some of these bubble style exports. This is a table style, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. It's just a different way of pushing text messages out of the Cellbrite extraction?
Yes.
Okay. Line 7. Can you walk us through this message including like the date and time and who sent it to whom and what it says.
Okay. So again, these are only from Craig and Leilani. So this one's from Craig saying WRY, which is commonly known as Where Are You, on September 25th at 2:24 a.m.
All right, so middle of the night.
Yeah.
All right. Line 8, can you just kind of walk through these from that one through line 16?
Okay. So the previous message was at 2:24 a.m. The next one is from Leilani at 2:25 that says, I'm home on Buckhalter. At 2:25 from Craig, hello. 2:26 a.m. from Leilani, I can come back out there. At 2:38 a.m. from Leilani, on the way. And then at 2:46 a.m., Leilani sends a video message. This is a thumbnail of the video that she sent, and it appears to be of a trailer from inside of a vehicle.
Now, you've been to Arkwright Road?
I have.
And you've seen the structures out there?
Yes.
Does this appear to show that she was present there at that time?
I believe it's the back part of Arkwright.
Okay. And that was at 2:46?
Correct.
So it looks like she's there at that point?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to line 13.
So at 2:48 a.m., Craig says, okay, 1 minute. And then it skips to 5:55 p.m., so several hours later.
That would be like 13 hours later or something
Yes.
like that? Okay.
Craig asked, you okay today? You man here.
And how did she respond to that?
At 6:54 p.m., she says, yeah, I'm okay. He's on his BS today, and I don't feel like arguing. And then in response, at 6:58 p.m., Craig says, okay, well, was thinking about you.
All right, so is that set of messages that we described, does that appear to be the first visit by the defendant to Craig that we see reflected in this set of messages at least?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, I'd like to go forward to line 62 on page 5.
Okay.
And if you could just do the same thing for 62 through 76. Go nice and slow with the times and everything.
Okay. So this is on September 26th at 11:59 p.m. from Leilani. On the way now, be there in about 12 to 14 minutes. At 12:04 a.m., Craig initiates a phone call and they speak for 53 seconds. At 12:05 a.m., Craig says, okay. At 12:06 a.m., Craig says, okay, I'm in back to my camper. Stay close to your left. My dog gonna try eat your car, but he won't.
And the next one?
At 12:16 a.m., Craig says hello. At 12:16 a.m., Leilani says, okay, I'm passing Quaco now. At 12:17 a.m., Leilani initiates a phone call for 19 seconds with Craig. And then at 12:21 a.m., Craig says, door open. Then skipping to 1:22 a.m., the previous was at 12:21, Leilani says, I'm home, I loved those hugs.
I'm home, I love those hugs.
Yep.
All right, so based on when she said she was passing Quaco Road on the way there, and when she says, I'm home, I love those hugs, roughly how long does it appear that she spent at Craig's place that night?
Roughly 45 minutes.
Okay. Moving on to line 41, when is this message sent in relation to the last one we just read?
Yep, so the last one was at 1:22, where she's saying, I'm home, I loved those hugs. The following message is from Craig at 1:26 a.m., And it says, okay, not more than I did. I was about to grab that kitty one time.
And what does she say to that?
In response, at 126, she said, LMFAO, you most definitely could have, exclamation point. And then at
Do you think people generally know what LMFAO means?
It's laugh my off, in case you didn't.
No. All right. 73, what's that? What does that one say?
73 is at 1:29 a.m. from Craig. Shit, I sure wanted to, like I see how it looked, FR.
Try that one again, sorry. Read it slowly.
Yeah.
And before you do that, what date are we on?
9/27.
Early morning hours of September 27th. Okay, go ahead with 73.
Yep, 73 at 1:29 a.m. Shit, I sure wanted to, like to see how it looked, FR.
What does FR mean?
For real.
Okay. How does the defendant respond to that in line 74?
So 74 at 1:36 a.m. is a response from Leilani sending a video message to Craig of herself masturbating.
75?
75 is at 1:38, so after the video message, Craig says, damn, you just made me hard as fuck, thank you.
And 76?
76 is at 1:39 a.m. from Leilani, well shit, I'm glad I did.
Moving on to 117. And this will be the last set that I'll ask you to read, okay? If you could take us through 117 through 131. Stop at 131, okay?
Okay. So it's on October 1st at 12:24 a.m. is the first message from Leilani. Dealing with Danny flipping his shit. As soon as I can leave here, I'll let you know. Craig responds at 12:34 a.m. K. And then at 1:14 a.m. from Craig, if you can't come out, it's okay. At 1:15 a.m. from Leilani, I'm about to head that way, just probably can only stay for a couple hours though, is that okay? Then at 1:22 a.m., Leilani says, heading to the car now. At 1:22 a.m., Leilani says, be there in about 20. At 1:25 a.m., Craig says, well, you want to park at rideshare.
What is rideshare?
It's pretty much just like an empty parking lot about a quarter mile from Arkwright. It's commonly known in that area as the rideshare.
Okay, go ahead.
At 1:26 a.m., Leilani says, yeah, I will. At 1:56 a.m., Leilani says, just pulled into the rideshare. At 2 a.m., they have a 2-second conversation over the phone. At 2 a.m., Craig says 2 min, which is 2 minutes. And then at 2:01, Leilani says, okay.
All right, so per those messages, it looks like by shortly after 2 a.m. they would have been together then?
Yes.
Okay. And the next message, 129?
So that one is at 3:23 a.m. The previous was at 2:01. Craig's
almost like an hour and a half has passed or so.
Yes,
okay.
More than an hour. That was good as fuck. I'll take that anytime. FRI, no, I made you come for a long time.
That was from Craig to the defendant?
Yes.
All right, the next message?
That one's at 3:56 a.m. from Leilani. I would be down to do that again anytime.
131?
At 3:56 a.m., Leilani says, and yes, you did for a good-ass min. And then the following message is at 11:59 p.m.
So how much time has passed at this point?
Well over 12 hours.
Okay, so this is like the next night?
Yes.
Okay.
What is the date now?
It is 10/1. So at 11:59, Craig says, you okay? On 10/2 at 9:02 a.m., Leilani says, yes, I'm okay. She then responds, about to drive over there actually. At 9:46 a.m., Craig responds, damn, you was tired, or I got rid of a lot of your stress. At 9:46, Craig says, LOL. At 9:47, Leilani says, a lot of stress was released. I need that sleep. At 9:54 a.m., Craig says, that's good, shit, I was ready for round 2 last night, but it's okay. You needed that rest. You look well rested.
And then 140.
And then 140 is at 9:57 a.m. from Leilani, I'm still wiping the crust from my eyes.
Simon sat expressionless throughout the hearing, her lack of visible emotion unsettling to those present. Her seemingly cold demeanor gave no indication of remorse. The defense then countered the prosecution by highlighting messages that had not been presented in court, aiming to challenge the narrative put forth by the prosecution. Emotions ran high when Chatham County Police Officer Sophia Zerke took the stand. She was among the first responders when Quinton Simon was reported missing on October 5th, 2022, describing the experience as mentally, emotionally, and physically draining. She testified that the finding was heartbreaking. More than 2 years after the death of her son, Leilani Simon was found guilty on all 19 charges. These charges included malice murder, felony murder, concealing the death of another, and making false statements related to her son's death. The jury returned a unanimous guilty verdict on October 25th, 2024, following approximately 6 hours of deliberation. Her sentencing is set for later, with the possibility of life imprisonment. Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.